students, we have an ethics program, and so we have, it's called In Pursuit of Ethics, and so we have a program where the teachers can institute some of our lessons, our learning modules, but then I also go and just kind of do like an overview about ethics and just,
That's
ethical,
cool.
Because a lot of them don't even realize that they're being faced with ethical dilemmas already now, and just to kind of prepare them for the future and all of that. I like doing that.
That's great.
It's neat, just to hear their stories, or you know, and then just how it's so different from whenever I was in high school. And
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So yeah, it's.
Oh, that's awesome. Do they have to ask you to come out, or do you?
Yeah, and it's something that we've been doing for a while. So the person before me, he had a pretty good lineup of people that, consistently wanted him to come out and kind of share the message. And so those people have reached out to me as well, and just kind of doing some updates. And obviously, they're new students, and so we go and talk. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I like it a lot.
That's so cool.
All right, guys.
Okay.
The mic is not up though. Must be on maybe, or maybe.
Oh, did I turn me?
Oh yeah, I think is that little.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay.
Yep, we're good now.
Sorry, Rand.
No,
Okay.
you're good.
Can you hear me?
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Got it figured out.
Okay, so let's talk about Road to Load. I mean, are we specifically talking about Road to Load, or am I missing companies in this mix of moving brokers? Is it mostly Road to Load, or?
Well, what the Better Business Bureau has information on is the Road to Load Best Movers. And so we can report that Road to Load Best Movers does have the lowest rating on our scale, which is an F rating. And that's because of unresolved and unanswered complaints. And so with these unanswered and unresolved complaints, there are consumers coming to us reporting that Road to Load Best Movers is either having delay of delivery, damaged goods, failure to communicate, or just overall poor customer service.
Okay.
And so Better Business Bureau hasn't actually spoke to that company. It's not because we haven't tried. We actually reached out to them about the pattern of complaints, but they haven't responded.
Okay. So then, did you have an investigator? Was it Steve who did it, or what was the investigation like?
So yeah, a little background. Steve does the international investigations, and so they're once a quarter, and those are really in-depth studies.
Okay.
But then we release press releases just locally, and so this was something that came from a press release, because what Better Business Bureau does is we're always like looking at Scam Tracker, and then also if a business does go from an A to an F, or if we're seeing an increase in pattern of complaints. So that's why this press release was issued, because Road to Load Best Movers did have an increase in their unanswered, unresolved complaints, and they do have the F rating.
How big of an increase was it? Do you know off the top of your head?
In the last 3 years is our reporting schedule, and so they had 15 complaints. But with them only being in business since 2020, there's been 15 complaints
That's
that have been
basically
closed.
I'm sure it's basically everybody.
Yeah, and so we just found it really interesting. A lot of the people that we spoke to, there was consumers that didn't receive their goods. They had to go travel 40 plus hours to receive their goods. There was some in a storage unit. They didn't even realize that their goods were in a storage unit. One consumer actually even had their goods auctioned off because they did not realize that their possessions were in the storage unit, and so they were eventually sold off. Luckily, the person that bought them, they got a hold of, and they were able to get them back. But it's very scary. You have all of these possessions that you've worked so hard for, and you want to trust that you're working with a reputable company. So the issue is that whenever you're working with a broker, you do not know for sure who's actually going to show up on that moving day. So if you do choose to use a broker for your moving services, make sure you know what moving companies they utilize, and check out those companies and make sure they're trustworthy companies.
So what do you surmise is happening? The people are calling a company in Florida, right? And then that company in Florida is hiring their broker, which is Road to Load, supposedly based in St. Louis. Okay. Or can you tell me about like what?
Yeah. So essentially, a lot of the consumers that have reported don't even realize that they're speaking to a broker. So it's really important to know that whenever you're calling to schedule a move, you know that you're actually speaking with the moving company. Even ask that question. Are you the company that's actually going to be doing the move, or is it going to be somebody else? Because that's what we see in our complaints, is that these consumers didn't even realize that who they were speaking to was not going to be the company that was going to show up on moving day. So when Road to Load Best Movers showed up, they were surprised, and they, in one instance, they were asked for more money. And sometimes whenever people move, they're working against the clock, so they're not able to do the research. But that's why it is really important to do your research and come to the Better Business Bureau at bbb.org. Check out the companies, ask the questions, ask the moving company if they are the actual moving company or if they're just acting as a broker. If there's a contract, make sure. And then also, if you're going to be getting estimates, make sure that they're actually coming to your home to see, because it's really hard to get an accurate estimate if nobody's actually coming.
Can you talk to me about like some of the egregious cases that you have, and I guess investigated or looked at?
Yeah.
Concerning this company?
One of the craziest situations was whenever the consumer said that they were. Let me start over. The consumer said that Road to Load Best Movers came to get their goods. They did not realize where their goods were actually going to be taken. So in that instance, they were trying to reach out to the company. There was poor communication. They weren't answering. They would get the runaround. And so they come to find out they're putting their goods in a storage unit that the consumer that hired them didn't even know where they were. And then in this instance, they refused to take it to the consumer. So that consumer had to drive 40 plus hours to get their goods.
Oh my gosh. Well, how did they even know? Sorry. How did they, sorry.
No, you're fine.
No. How do you think that they even knew? Like, I'm just trying to piece it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how would you even find out that your stuff was in a storage container? Like, how would you even be able to have that information?
So eventually, the owner does answer, either the owner or the mover or whoever it is. It's unclear who they're actually speaking to. But at some point, they do get some communication back, but it's usually delayed. And so then these consumers are without their goods. And so some people have lived in hotels, and some people have lived, they've moved into their new home, but they don't have their prized possessions. They don't have their furniture. They don't have things to make their new home an actual home. Mm-hmm. And moving is something that people only encounter a few times in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. So it's unfamiliar territory, and so they don't really know what steps that they need to take. So they feel vulnerable, and once again, sometimes they're working against the clock, so they're having to make rash choices. And then that's whenever they're kind of getting into this mess.
How is this legal?
It's definitely not legal, but it's hard to prove things. And so without, and then if they eventually come through with the goods, it's hard to really, I know some of the people that I talked to said that they had reached out to local law enforcement. And so as far as the Better Business Bureau goes, we can only do so much. We try to report on the companies so people can come to us and look at those companies, see which ones are trustworthy, have good ratings, good reviews, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, do you know anything about where this address is in St. Louis? It looks like a house when you see that address on where Road to Load is registered. Is it a real registered business, or?
Road to Load Best Movers is a registered business, but there too, whenever you're going to do business with any company, you want to look at that and see, are they able to actually conduct business there and know these things prior to hiring them. Better Business Bureau wasn't able to confirm, that it is. Whenever they went there was no confirmation. But as a consumer, it's just really important to know and look to see, and look up that information yourself to see where they're located. Is it a residential area? If it is a residential area, kind of some red flags should pop up.
What should people do if their items are still held hostage? By one of these companies, what are they supposed to do?
They can contact the company until they answer. Unfortunately, there's no legal action at this point that they can really take. You can, you can reach out to the company, but you can reach out to Better Business Bureau, file a complaint. But if the company doesn't respond, and that's why consumers when they're filing these complaints, that they are so scared because they don't know where their prized possessions are that they work so hard for, and if they're ever going to get them back. So it's so important. People are coming in and driving away with all of your goods, and not knowing where they're going is a very scary thought. So it's very important to do your research.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I can't think of anything unless I'm missing something. I mean, what is it going to take, I guess, to stop companies like this from doing business in Missouri?
That's something that Better Business Bureau really, can't speak on.
Okay,
It's,
yeah.
We can, like I said, just always go back to making sure that the consumers are doing their research. And like I said, the biggest thing is whenever they're talking and scheduling a moving company, making sure that moving company is actually the company that's going to be doing the service.
Gotcha.
Because that's where we're seeing a lot of the issues, is whenever it's going through the broker. And that's why that press release was initially, released, because I don't think, like I said, and even talking to consumers, they didn't even realize that moving company was not going to be the one that showed up.
Yeah.
And that's what's the craziest to me.
Yeah. So is Road to Load consider a broker, or just the company that hires Road to Load? I mean, what would I call Road to Load?
Road to Load Best Movers is the actual moving company.
Okay.
And there's been
various
various brokers, and with the consumers that we spoke with, they've quoted different brokers.
Yeah.
So they're obviously going through.
Oh, well, I'm just wondering, do the brokers get dinged through the BBB as well? Or because you would think that there would be an incentive for the broker to hire good movers,
right?
Unless they're in it together as a scam situation,
right? And what's hard, it's hard to label it as a scam, because these people usually do get their goods. It's just the frustration that they're having to go to. They're having to make all of these arrangements to get their goods, or just the constant conversations trying to figure out where their goods are, where they can go to get their goods, and just the time that they're having to put into it. And especially with this market being so hot, maybe people are selling their houses are selling quicker than they anticipated, so they're having to move out of their home quicker than they thought, and so they're not having the time to be able to do the research.
Gotcha. So the best advice is to make sure that when you call a moving company, that you say, are you a broker, or are you moving me?
Yes, making sure that there's a clear understanding, and then if there's a contract, because several of the consumers that have spoke to the Better Business Bureau have said they didn't even realize until they received a contract, and it was in very small print, that it was not clear that the broker, that they were speaking to a broker. So, and just make sure if there is a contract, always get that contract in writing, get that, have them send it to you, and never agree to anything over the phone.
Gotcha. I am just curious, what is the, technically, and maybe you can't, but maybe you can, what is technically the illegal part of it? That they're keeping stuff, or that they're not following through on their contract, or that they're gouging people at the house on pickup? What would be the illegal, the actual thing that's illegal? Is it keeping the stuff?
Well, yeah, we can't really comment on what's illegal, because we're not saying that anything illegal is being done. It's just the Better Business Bureau is just making other consumers aware of what Road to Load Best Movers has done to other consumers, and letting them know, just advising caution if you are going to use Road to Load Best Movers. So you can come to Better Business Bureau at bbb.org to see other consumers' reviews and complaints.
I mean, it's got to take a lot for the BBB to send out a press release on
Correct.
a company, right?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever we see the ratings shift or an increase in complaints, that is really a red flag for the Better Business Bureau, and that's when we really start looking into a company.
Okay. Anything you want to add?
I think we kind of went over it all. I know it was hard because they did do a study with Steve Baker in 2020, but it's kind of, with the numbers being outdated, it's hard to, because I kind of looked at that too to see if we could bring it in, and since Steve was going to be here, I didn't know if he was going to comment on it, but I talked to Chris too, and it was with it being, a year old, we didn't want to, and so it could be something, in a year to come, because it is, the the moving, like he said, it's an issue just along with all the other
Yeah.
scams. But with Road to Load, it's hard to label them as a scammer because they're, it's just more of the frustration in how they're doing business.
Mhm.
They're not adhering to the Better Business Bureau standards. So.
But I'm wondering, so if I wanted to dig into it deeper, do you think I should call the police, or do you think I should?
You could call and see what because I can't comment on what actions they're able to take, what the police are able to take. I know in talking to some consumers, they obviously have reached out to them because when they don't have their possessions, they do consider it to be, the consumer feels like they have been stolen from, and so they reach out to local law enforcement to see what they can do. And then it's hard too because are you contacting the one where you moved from or where you moved to?
Yeah.
Because now these goods are in transition and there's no way to know where they are and what's the proper law enforcement to contact.
Yeah, it just seems so scammy to me, and it seems like it's something that like the AG should take on, or like a lawmaker say, okay, we're not going to, brokers are illegal or something, like that. To me, I'm always like, what's the legislation piece?
Right.
Can we get a legislation piece into it? But I don't know if there's ever been legislation on brokers.
Not to my knowledge, I couldn't comment on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the main thing of, like I said, just really getting that information out there and letting people know that this is a thing. Because honestly, before I read this, I didn't realize there was such thing as brokers. And because I've never had to use a moving company. My parents are luckily still young enough. If I move, I'm just like, hey, help me,
Yeah.
But
we've used it a lot, but we've always moved ourselves. And then actually, when we did our car transport, that was new for us.
Right.
From Seattle to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And we made sure that the company that moved us was the company that we hired,
right.
Not a broker.
Yeah.
But even then, they're kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like weird people who show up at your house.
Well, and you've got so much going on as a mover, to remember to ask every single question is hard, and
yeah. Well, they're like common sense questions, but at the same time, you wouldn't think to ask them.
Exactly.
I called you. Of course, you're the company that's going to move me.
You don't think that you shouldn't necessarily, in your mind, don't think you should have to ask them, but
I wouldn't have asked that.
Right. So yeah.
Okay. It's I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else going on that you think would be interesting?
At this moment, no. And I've even kind of gone through Scam Tracker too to see if there's any because that's kind of how we keep track of things, of what's going on, what people are reporting to Scam Tracker. So if I start seeing more, or like I said, I was out this morning, but I know that we did release another one on, I think it was another company, but I need to see if it's in the St. Louis area or, because we have 4 other regional offices, so sometimes it's, out of their area.
Sure.
And
Okay.
it would kind of be, you know what I mean? The people in St. Louis aren't going to be concerned necessarily about some company out of Springfield, Missouri. It's too far removed. But, so yeah, nothing that I know of off the top of my head. And then I hope in the new year to have some good content.
I did the whole car transport in July from Michigan to get a car down here.
How was it?
It was terrible. I ran through all those, everything she was saying. They have all these people transports online. They're all brokers.
And they all call you
and then
nonstop.
You go out and some website got it, and all of a sudden all these brokers were calling me, right? And they're all sending me these prices, right? Well, we'll do it for this. So I'm like looking at, some of them were lower, some of them were really high. So I called the one that was like kind of low, but it was there, right? Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, we can do it. So a week goes by, and so then all of a sudden they call me, hey, we can get it picked up today, but it's going to cost another $200.
Right.
So it was, and that's how it went. I did this for a month.
Oh my God!
And finally, if I could just get a hold of the guy that actually does it, and now I got his name, at least the guy that I dealt with. He goes through all these brokers, and the brokers take a chunk of money off of there somehow. I don't know how, but.
See, it just seems so illegal to me. It just doesn't seem right. Well, we ended up using a company called Montway, and they were fabulous. They and they weren't the broker. But the drivers are still weird. Like when the driver just showed up at the house, and I was like, where's the, where's the car? Like where's the thing? It was like on a bigger road, but I was like,
yeah.
so
how are you gonna get there?
And he had like a girl with him, they were probably traveling across country, just a couple,
A free
taking
trip, yeah. Hey, you wanna come with me, babe?
Yeah, exactly.
I was just like, what the
Make a
hell
trip
is
out of this.
happening? Yeah. Hope I get my car in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But they were actually on time and good. But that those industries are really freaky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just totally freaky.
Yeah.
Then
Well-
it makes me wonder about like the moving, like really, where are those items getting stored? That's what I want to know. Like, how do we find that out?